And we have the great joy of Mitch Austin again, which I think is wonderful. We get part two, where we had the divine call yesterday and talked about that. We get the divine transformation today. So you guys also know Mitch had an illustrious past in our way of thinking. Um, speak to teach, inspire, or sorry, skip the two, speak, teach, inspire, which I think is neat. And his weekly show, which we should check out. Change your story, change your life. We have a meditation first, and then maybe a song, and then we'll get to hear Mitch. So let's get to that. Let's get our heads right first.
So let's just take a deep breath in. Out. Just allow ourselves to become fully present in this time and this space. Letting anything come before this moment. Letting go of the to-do lists, the busyness of the morning, and coming into the eternal now. And so I just invite you to breathe in the loving kindness of spirit right into your body. And repeat after me in your mind. May I be held in loving kindness. May I be happy and safe. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I always have enough. May my heart know. Now I invite you to think of someone you would like to send loving kindness to. Maybe it's a friend or a loved one. Or maybe it's someone you've fallen in discord with. Just bring them in your mind's eye. And repeat after me in your mind. May you be held in loving kindness. May you be happy and safe. May you be healthy in mind and in body. May you always have enough. May your heart know peace. Breathe in that energy of loving kindness to yourself, to the people around you, the world. Vibrating this loving kindness throughout our spaces, our places, everywhere we go. Walking with a heart that knows peace. So I just invite you now to make your way back into the space, this place. Wiggling your fingers and toes, fully back, alert and awake. What is?
standing in an unfamiliar place, halfway around the world from whence I came, seeing sights I never thought I'd see, as distant from my roots as I could be. Still I'm home, still I'm home, still I'm home. When I'm lying in bed and crying myself to sleep, to be bereft to even pray my soul to keep, when I'm wondering if I'll ever see the sun, when I'm worried that the worst has just begun, still I'm home, still I'm home, still I'm home. 'Cause I know I'll make it through, and I know you're here with me. Despite appearances, this experience is just part of my story, and I know I'll be alright if I don't hold on too tight. Someday soon I'll see this will only be the faintest memory. Cause I know I'll be alright if I don't hold on too tight. Someday soon I'll see this will only be a distant memory. 'Cause there's nowhere on this planet I can go. No, there's nowhere off the map that I can roam. Nothing I could ever say or do. There is never separation from you. Still I'm home, still I'm home, still I'm home. Oh yeah, still I'm home, still I'm home. Still I'm home, still I'm home, still I'm home.
How beautiful. Ah, wasn't that beautiful? I bet you that house has a few stories, don't you think? Just looking at it. So grateful to be back again 2 weeks in a row. And this is great. I love doing part ones and part twos. I think they're so much fun. And last week we talked about divine calls and what they look like. Sometimes they're feeling tones, sometimes they're something that we hear or that we see or we dream about. And that those calls call us to either awaken, create something, or to heal. And now we're going to enter into the second part of the conversation, which is the transformation that happens when we follow a divine call. I remember one of my first divine calls. I was 5 years old and I wanted to swim. Anyone remember wanting to swim? You know, that rite of passage. I lived in Texas and we had a pool and all the kids were in there swimming in the deep end, jumping off the diving board. But I couldn't go there because I didn't know how to swim. That was my first call. I felt that pull so strong. And I didn't know how to do it. I just know I wanted to do it. So I entered into the workshop of the imagination. You know, my mind, I was dreaming about it before I go to sleep, that someday I'm going to swim. And I had a very clear picture that I wanted to swim. And then I started to open up my mind around it and things started coming in. I started to experiment with bobbing up and down in the water and then seeing how people kicked and then moving my arms in the same fashion. And then pretty soon I learned how to float to get my feet up, but I'm still in the shallow end. I thought, how do I get in the deep end? And then I had a thought, you know, from that place I always call spirits like placeholder out of the blue, that people only swim in the top 3 feet of water. I thought they only swim in this much, so it shouldn't matter how deep the water is. So I had a theory now. I had a theory and I was clear about what I wanted to do, but then I needed to do something really important for that to actually mean something towards this vision. I had to make a clear, committed, irrevocable decision. And my decision was I was going to scoot down the wall and I was going to bob down till the water was just over my head and then grab the wall again. And I was going to test my theory. So I remember I did the most important thing after I made this decision to swim across the pool, testing my theory, is I put one hand on the wall, one out in front of me, and I pushed off. And I thrashed and I moved my arms, and I'm sure it was quite a sight. I'm swimming all the way across the pool, and I got to the other side. And now, when I got to the other side, I saw myself differently. I had transformed from someone who couldn't swim to someone who could. And then I started doing it over and over and over. And then pretty soon I was in deeper water and I was jumping into the deep end, reinforcing and expanding this new identity of myself as a swimmer. And this little story of transformation and learning to swim, I understood that there were basically 5 parts that we can take from this story and apply to our own calls that we're being asked to transform into a new direction, whether it's awakening, creating something, or healing something. And those 5 steps are: first, to hear the call. The second is to work in the workshop of the imagination, the mind, to get a clear picture of what it is that we're being called to. And then the third step is to make a clear, committed, irrevocable decision. Decision means to cut away anything that's not the thing that you're focusing on. And then the fourth thing is to act. And we're going to talk about how powerful action is within spirit, and actually how this stirs forces in the unseen, because it reinforces that this is real. And all matter of reality starts to collapse when we act. And then the fifth and most important thing is to keep walking in this new identity, this new transformation, so that it can take root in our lives and our experience. I love a little wisdom here from Ernest Holmes on this subject. He says, when you want to do a big thing, get the mental pattern, make it perfect. Know just what it means and enlarge your thought. Keep it to yourself, and then pass it over to the creative power behind all things. And then he says, wait and listen. When the impression comes, it will be followed with assurance. And don't talk to anyone about it. Never listen to the negative talk or pay attention to it. And you will succeed where others fail. You will succeed where others fail. And so I did. I got a clear mental picture, and then I started getting instructions. So I taught myself to swim when I was 5 years old. So what types of transformation are there? There's several different kinds. There is the organic transformation over time. We have 4 archetypal stages that we move through in life generally. We start out as the athlete, and then where we're obsessed with our body and how we look and what others think of us. Then we move into the warrior, achieve, make our way in the world. And then we move into the statement stage. And this is where we've had some experience now, and we want to leave a statement. We want to leave a legacy. We want to leave something of significance from our journey. And then in the 4th stage of life, we enter into spirit, the stage of spirit, where we start to become more contemplative, where we go within much more, where we deepen our relationship with the divine in an intimate way. So that's organic over time. But sometimes our transformation's just thrust upon us, where life makes a left-hand turn. Anybody ever have life make a left-hand turn on us? Anybody? I mean, just me. It was just me. That out of the blue thing that happens, maybe it's somebody leaves, or a diagnosis, or a change of home or vocation, right? Those types of situations we're forced to transform whether we want to or not. And those times we can also use these principles to transform. Those 5 steps still help us. I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my laptop here. Can you plug it on the other side? Thank you. I thought my battery was fully charged. I apologize for that. And then the last one is where we decide to make a change, where we consciously hear the call, like I did. I heard the call to swim, and then I decided I was going to do it. And so that's the kind of change and transformation we're going to talk about today mostly. This choice in transformation. Because here's the thing, when we go through transformation, whether it's over time, whether it's forced upon us, or whether we choose it, there is no way to transformation or through transformation. Transformation is the way. And the reason I say that is so many times when we're entering into transformation, we want to know already what it's going to be like, right? We already want to know what the other side is. So we have some sense of comfort or reassurance. But that isn't the deal with transformation, because you're in one place and you want to get to the transformation, but in between is the gap. And that gap is the place when we enter it, life is unsure, the ground is unsteady, our identity may feel not as clear, right? If we get divorced, for instance, we're no longer the husband. Who are we? And if we have some other change that drops in, or we choose to leave a vocation for another vocation, then we may not know who we are. We're no longer the boss or the supervisor. And Daniel, can you plug this in to a plug? Oh, do you have a charger? Sorry, just one moment.
Is there a plug around here?
Should be on. Yeah. There you go. If you could plug that, and then plug this. So there's my transformation into electricity for my iPad. Yay! We're set now. So anyone ever hear of Mary O'Malley? She's a wonderful author. She wrote a book called What's in the Way is the Way. She's fabulous. She has many YouTubes. I highly recommend her. And she also says that when we want to transform, we have to look at what's in the way, because it's actually pointing us to the path we need to move into. And what was in my way when I was learning to swim was my fear of sinking or drowning. And so I had to confront that and find my way through that in order to learn to swim. So you want to know if what's dropping in is your imagination or your divine assignment? Imagination, crazy, just little thought floating through a divine assignment? There's three things we can look for. First off, we can look and see, is it stirring in your soul to the point where you know your life wouldn't be complete unless you did this? Unless you did this one thing. Maybe it's to travel somewhere. Maybe it's to start a nonprofit, or to volunteer, or to write a book. We got anybody writing books? I know we have at least one author in the group. And for me, that stir was public speaking. I remember years ago when I had become a practitioner, I wanted to speak, but I thought, who's going to let me speak? I'm not a minister. But I had that pull, that call, and it wouldn't go away. And finally, somebody gave me a chance. I kept asking, and I got an opportunity to speak, and I've been speaking ever since. The second thing is that in the stillness, you know it's yours to do. You ever have something pop up and you just knew it was yours to do? You knew it like, this is your left hand, this is your right hand, and this is yours to do or to be. I had this experience when I was listening to a sermon once, and one of my mentors was talking about our teaching. And in our teaching, we say, you can have anything you want, right? We know law of mind. We can use law of mind to call in things that we're creators. You can have anything you want. But here's the thing. You can't be anyone you want to be. You can only be who you are. And when she said that, what dropped in very clearly is that I'm a minister. And I was a little bit shocked, like, oh no, not that. I have to give up every Sunday. I have to quit the church of NFL football. Please, no, 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 no. Don't take that away from me. But I knew it was true. I knew it was true. And once you have a knowing, you can't unknow it. Once your mind is stretched to a certain space, it can't go back. And then that knowing is going to live within you until you start to embark on the adventure of transformation. And then the third is it doesn't go away. It keeps coming back over and over and over. I had a vision to do a little program called Rise and Speak, where I help people look at their life or their mess, what I call their mess, and make it a message and then perform it in a TED Talk. I had that vision in 2012. And I didn't do it until 2018. It didn't go away. It just wouldn't go away. And now it's one of the most powerful programs that I offer. So we can trust these callings and we can move into them. And if we don't move into them, once we know it, once we see it, we'll get dragged into the gap somehow. That gap between what we know is ours to transform into and where we're at. So we can either consciously move into it or be dragged. Your choice. So let's talk about the second stage, which is working with the mind, right? So the mind is sometimes going to try and talk us out of it, like it did for me for 6 years with speaking. Who are you to teach people to speak? You're not even speaking yet, right? Our mind. So we got to win the battle of the mind when the call comes in and get that mental pattern, that specific and clear mental pattern. And that's our work. Our work is to keep our mind on that and not all the negative talk, not all the who are you or you don't have enough. You know you're losing the battle when the twos and the nots come in. You're too old, or you're too out of shape, or you're not smart enough, or you're not educated enough. When the twos or nots show up, You got to get those out of your mind. You're losing, right, the mental focus and pattern, and we're getting derailed. So that's our work. Keep focused on the mental pattern. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, when I was falling asleep, I was seeing myself swimming. I was feeling the water. You want to use all the senses. You're feeling, you're hearing. I was hearing the water splashing, embodying that fully in our mental experience. As we move in to the third step, which is to make a clear, committed, irrevocable decision. And once you've reached that stage, there is no going back. There is no plan B. I love what Steve Harvey, comedian, says. He says, making a plan B is making a plan to fail. When there's another option, we tend to go to the more comfortable, what we consider easy option. But when we've made a clear, committed, irrevocable decision, there is no other path but forward towards what we've called in. And when we step into that level of energy, we start to collapse down reality to that one point. And we know science tells us that what we put our attention on affects matter. Who's heard of the double slit experiment? Anybody? Yeah, this is where they pass the electron through a slit. And when they passed it through one slit, it created like it was a little ball. It just created a slit pattern on the other side. But when they put two slits there, it didn't create two slits. It created a wave pattern as if it was water. It changed properties. And then they looked at it closely when it went through the two slits. They put a little camera, and when they put a little camera and they observed it, two slits developed. It actually collapsed down into matter because they looked at it. So what are we collapsing down into matter? When we make a clear decision, it's a strong signal for all other possibility to go away except the one that we're focused on. Science behind it. And then the fourth step is to act. That's the most powerful thing we can do, is we've now made the decision and we've acted, which amplifies that energetic pattern into reality even stronger. Now, there's a great story in the Bible that exemplifies this. It's the story of Elijah and the widow with the jar of oil. Elijah actually means this, the names in Bible mean something else. They always have some representation. Elijah means wonder worker. And so one day, Elijah comes across the wife of one of his servants that had died, and she was distraught. And he asked her, he said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Elijah, the debt collectors are going to come and take my sons because my husband's died. I have no money to pay them, and they're going to take my sons as payment. And I don't know what to do." And Elijah said, "Well, what do you got? What do you got in the house?" And she says, "Well, all I have is this one little jar of oil. That's it." He says, okay, we can work with that. He says, go out to all your neighbors and get empty jars, as many empty jars as you can. And then I want you to go into your house. And in the Bible, house means consciousness. And I want you to shut the door so nobody else can see or know what you're doing. And then I want you to start pouring the oil. Now, she doesn't question this. She doesn't argue with him that there's only a little bit of oil and they have all these containers. She just goes out and she does it. And in the Bible, jars they actually symbolize transformation and creation. So here she's got all of these mental equivalents, right? Each jar is like a mental equivalent. And she starts pouring and pouring and pouring. And the oil represents spirit or life. She starts bringing life into into the transformation of each jar. Now, here's the thing it says. When she gets to the last jar, this is very important. When she gets to the last jar, the oil stops. The oil stops. See, when we make a mental equivalent in our own jars in the unseen for spirit to pour itself into and to bring life to it, it's going to stop where we stop. If we want to manifest $1,000, we have 1,000 jars. And when that oil, when spirit gets to 999 and then 1,000, it stops. So where in your life have you stopped creating clay jars for spirit to pour itself into? Where do you need to start creating a mental equivalent for spirit to bring it to life? Maybe it's in your money life. Maybe it's in your health. Maybe it's in your vitality or your friendships, right? We all have some area where we can start to create that jar or that container in the unseen with that clear picture. And when we do, we need to close the door to our consciousness. We shouldn't go around telling people, right? I've heard one way to get a new love in your life if you're single is to start setting a second spot at the table, right? For someone, as if you're having a date. But if you tell people you're doing that, they're going to be like, "What are you doing?" Right? And they're going to start talking you out of this. How crazy are you? What do you think you're doing? Right? You got to shut the door so that that can remain pure and focused into our experience. And then the fifth step is we need to embrace the new identity. We need to step into, remember, I was someone who didn't swim, and now I'm a swimmer. Whenever we call ourselves from an identity, we tend to align our actions and how we move through the world. For instance, sometimes people offer me coffee, and I say I'm not a coffee drinker. Not because I don't want to be, my body doesn't like it. But I never drink coffee. If someone were to hand me a cigarette, I'd say I'm not a smoker, right? Right? That identity is so clear, it drives how we move through the world and what shows up and what leaves. Because if it isn't a match to your identity, it leaves. Like lottery winners. Who's heard that lottery winners are like worse off a year later? Anybody ever hear that? They lose all their money, many of them, and even more, and they wish they'd never won because they hadn't cultivated a mental equivalent. They didn't have all the jars in the unseen to hold that volume of abundance. So it must leave. They didn't have that identity. They say that millionaires sometimes will take 5 or 10 years to make their first million. And if they lose it, they make it right back because they've developed the mental equivalent. They're a match to it. Same is true for weight loss. They say that people who lose weight are much more successful if they do it while they look at a picture of a previous version of themselves that is thinner. They actually tend to maintain that weight loss because they've assumed the identity of the smaller version of themselves. Here's how the Bible says it. The Bible says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Right? That renewing that has us step into a new identity. So maybe you're trying to quit flour and sugar. Now you're just a person who doesn't eat flour and sugar. That's just not you anymore. And then when you start to take that on, it helps you maintain those behaviors for what you've called for. So let us remember the 5 steps, the call or the vision that comes in. It's going to send us on a journey, either one that we sign up for or we get pulled into. And then let us get a clear mental picture, keep our minds focused there, and not allow other people or our own selves to pull us out of that vision. And let's make a clear, committed, irrevocable decision. I love what Yogi Berra says about making a decision versus being involved. He says, in a ham and egg breakfast meal, the chicken was involved and the pig was committed, right? It's committed. It means you're putting all the resources in there. 4, let us act energetically. We're pouring more spirit into our jar, into our clay jar, into that mental equivalent for it to come to life. And then let us assume the identity to call ourselves the swimmer, or the person that's good with money, or the person that's now healthy, or the person that doesn't eat sugar and flour anymore. Whatever that is, we need to reinforce it so it stays in our experience and doesn't leave us. One of the greatest examples in nature of transformation is that of the caterpillar to the butterfly. And I always wondered, what would a conversation look like between the butterfly and the caterpillar? You know, I imagine it goes something like this. The butterfly goes to the caterpillar and says, you know, I was once like you. And the caterpillar goes, what? No way. Look at you and look at me. And the butterfly says, it's true. And one day you will be just like me. And the caterpillar says, but how? How can I be like you? And then the butterfly says, well, one day you will have a call to climb a plant, spin a home for yourself out of your own silk. Then you're going to dissolve into goo. But don't worry, in there you're going to grow arms like mine, wings like mine, a body like mine, antennas like mine. The caterpillar says, well, that's a lot. I'm not sure if I know how to do all that. And the butterfly says, well, here's the very best thing. If you don't remember all of that, to climb the plant, to spin the home, that you're going to turn into goo, all you really need to remember is to trust the process. And so I invite you that if you've had a call from spirit and you don't remember all of these 5 steps, whether it's a call to awaken or create something or to heal, I invite you to remember the wisdom of the butterfly and trust the process. Blessed be.
Thank you, Mitch. It's an interesting talk. I like the butterfly. Thank you.